Hey guys, how are we doing today? It's Coach Alex Gonzalez from Maximize Potential coming at y'all with a great Mobility Monday. We got a little sneak peek of Squattober here, and I don't doubt some of y'all have been feeling it over the weekend. Today I'm going over the 3 best roll and stretch combos that we can do to take care of ourselves throughout the month of Squattober. But before we get into that, new shirts has dropped for Squattober. Pretend like I'm wearing it. Hasn't come in yet. As always, this is going to be a limited run, so grab one while you can. They're only going to be available for the month of October. Today, I'm giving us the 3 best roll and stretch combos that we can do to take care of ourselves through the month of Squattober. Let's jump right into it. Before we get into anything, I want to make us a little bit more familiar with a couple of mobility tools that we'll be using throughout this month. I'm going to begin from least intense and work our way up to the most intense. Now the first tool that we can use is going to be a hand roller. Now the hand roller I really enjoy because we can put custom pressure into different areas that we may want. I really like this for large areas like my legs, my quads, my hamstring, even my calves at the bottom here. They have these small bumpy pieces in the middle that individually rotate to make sure that they can conform to our muscle shapes. Now again, this is a good tool so we can kind of control the pressure that we're putting into our own muscles, but if we want a little bit more pressure or our wrists just aren't really big fans of this, we can always use a foam roller. Now this full-size foam roller is probably the one that we're most familiar with. Again, this is going to be great for larger areas, great for the quads, great for the glutes, great for the hamstrings. Now, depending on where you find these can usually run between $20 and $40. I would highly recommend checking out Amazon for the cheaper ones. Now, the full-size one is a little bit intimidating. It's a-okay, they do come in a half size. Not all of them come with these bumps, but this one in particular does. These bumps are nice and soft, but they do get their job done when it comes to really digging into some of those deeper areas that we need. This is going to be really good for our calves or areas that we may need a little bit more pressure. Again, you can find these on Amazon, or if you're interested in a half size that doesn't have all of the bumps, you can actually go over to Five Below and they sell them for about $5. Getting a little bit smaller now, this is the orb. Now the orb has a slightly smaller diameter than those foam rollers, so this is going to allow us to pinpoint pressure a little bit easier, but it is going to be a little bit more diffuse. I do like using this for my hamstrings because I can sit on it and it allows me to get a good amount of pressure into areas that may need to get a little deeper. Finally, we have some of our smallest tools. Now I would recommend using a tennis ball first. One, this is probably going to be the most common thing that we have around the house, but because it is so small, we can get into smaller areas like the upper back, like the low back, sometimes smaller intrinsic muscles around the hips. Now I do recommend using a tennis ball first because it does have a good amount of give here. It's rather soft. This way we're not putting too much pressure on any one area. If you feel like you need a little bit more pressure, you can absolutely use a lacrosse ball. Now the lacrosse ball is soft rubber, but it is very dense. This is going to be really good for some of that deep soft tissue stuff. Things in our neck, things in our upper back, been intrinsic muscles like our tibialis anterior, and even sometimes the calf. Now regardless of which one of these you use, it's not absolute that you have to use these on the ground. In many cases I actually prefer to use these up against a wall because I can control the amount of pressure that I'm putting into these. Great. Now that we're familiar with everything here, we're going to go ahead and grab some tools, head downstairs, and we'll get into our mobility. All right, so we're going to start with the biggest muscles here, and the guys that I have the most issues with, that's going to be the quads. So to get into a good quad roll here, we're going to take a full-sized or a half-size foam roller. Now we can also use a hand roller, but I'm going to go ahead and explain that after this. So grab your foam roller with your non-dominant hand, roll that up against your knees. Now with your dominant hand, slowly walk yourself down to the ground until we come down onto our elbows. Now, with our toes pointed straight back, we are going to roll up to the hip bone. Now remember, with any myofascial, we don't want to roll directly on any bone, but we can use bone as a guide. So, coming up as high as I can up on my quads without hitting any bone, then I'm going to slowly roll down till I get to just about the top of the knees. Again, not directly on that knee joint, but just using it as a guide and not going any further than that. Now we are going to be scanning this area. I think of it kind of like a submarine radar. So we're scanning this area, and once we get a blip, so right here, we're gonna seek and destroy. So I'm gonna sit here, put a little bit of extra pressure. I'm gonna press into it just a tad and be here for about 20-30 seconds. You should feel this pain dissipate. Once you spend about a minute or so in this area, we're actually gonna change positions. Right, so as I mentioned, our feet should have been pointed straight back during that first minute and a half or so. Now the second position that we're going to be getting into is primarily going to be a different motion in the feet and knees. I like to come all the way up to the hips, and I'm going to plant my toes down and rotate my toes and my knees outwards. Now that we're here, we have access to the inside of the quads, and we can roll again from the hip all the way down to the knee. Again, scanning through different areas, spending about 90 seconds here. After you find a couple of spots, again, we are going to change positions one more time. If we got to the middle, if we got to the inside, we have to get to the outside. So, point these toes towards each other. Now we should have good access towards the outside of these quads here. And now we're just rolling again from the hips all the way down to just above the knees. Take about a minute and a half here, find 2 or 3 areas. All in all, this should take about 5 minutes or so. Now you can absolutely use a half size for this. Just know that it's going to take a little bit longer. You're probably going to want to spend about 4 minutes on each leg. So as I said earlier, I was going to teach us how to get into the quads with our hand roller here. If we think about it the same way as a foam roller, we have to get into that middle, inside, and outside lanes of our quad. So we're going to take our hand roller, and we're just going to kind of relax the leg here, and we're going straight down the middle lane of this quad. Seek and destroy. We're scanning this area. Once we find a little blip in the system, sit on it 20-30 seconds until you feel that pressure dissipate. Make sure to get the inside and the outside of that quad. Again, this is going to take about 3, 4, maybe 5 minutes per leg, depending on how many spots we have. Great, now we can get into the accommodating stretch for it. My favorite quad stretch, and your most likely favorite friend for the rest of the month, is going to be the couch stretch. Now, called the couch stretch reasonably so because we can do it well on our couch. I have my box here as a replacement for the couch. So the way we're going to get into this, we're going to take the front angle of that front ankle, and we're going to place it right on the corner of the couch of our box, wherever we are going to be, and we're slowly going to bring that knee down to the ground. Now I have a mat here just so this way the knee stays nice and comfortable. You can fold up a towel, put a pillow underneath here. We should feel a good stretch down our quad right in the front where we just rolled. Now the further back that we lean here, we should feel it more into that quad. Remember, we're leaning back with the whole body. I don't want to see us going like this into our low back. That's going to put a lot of unneeded pressure in there, and it's just not going to be a good time. If we need to take a little bit of pressure off, we can always lean forward. I do suggest progressing this. A lot of the time when we're first getting into this stretch, it may be a little bit difficult being able to sit all the way up. So I do recommend having something out in front of us that we can kind of hold, maybe a PVC pipe, maybe just a table out in front of us. We're gonna hold this for about 2 minutes on each side. All right, our next roll is gonna be our glute roll. Now the most common thing that we can use for this is gonna be our full-size foam roller, but of course we can always use our half size, and in some cases we can also use our orb. But I would recommend this if we are just getting into mobility. This is not going to feel super, super good if we're just starting out. So with our full-size roller, we're going to take both hands and place that firmly up against the back of the hips. Press down and sit directly up on top of it. You should feel both sit bones at the bottom of this foam roller here. Now the side that we're going to want to stretch, we're going to want to take that foot and place it up onto that opposite knee. Now, if we don't necessarily have that external mobility to get that all the way up, we can outstretch that opposite leg, place that foot here, and then bend that knee up as high as we possibly can. Of course, we're working with your own range of motion, so make sure that you are careful here. Now that we're in this position, we're going to lean over to the side of that foot that we have up. We should be on that right glute over here. And like I said earlier, we don't want to be directly on any bone, but we can use them as markers. So, staying away from that sit bone at the very bottom here, that's our ischial tuberosity. We're going to roll all the way up to that top hip crest here. Same kind of ruling here with the quads. We're scanning the area. We're looking for little blips in the radar, and once you do, we're going to make small motions here, about 20-30 seconds until you feel that dissipate. Now the glute is a smaller muscle, so we don't want to take quite as long on this. The quads are really large, so 5 minutes on each is no problem. But the glutes are a lot smaller, so we want to limit this to about 2 minutes per side. Everything we do to one side, we got to do to the other, so go ahead, swap it over to the other side. Now, my favorite accommodating stretch for this is going to be a pigeon stretch. We're going to start by getting into this half kneel position. I like to take that front foot and take that foot across my body and drop that knee off to the side here as I slowly lower myself down. Now, my knee is pointing outwards as my back foot slowly walks itself back and elongates as far as it possibly can. You should feel a good stretch in this front leg glute, and then you should feel a good stretch in the hip flexor of this back leg here. Now, I have pretty good external rotation in my legs here, so my shin is just about parallel with the wall here. Most people aren't going to be able to do that, so it's okay if you need to lower down that foot. We should still be getting a good stretch in this glute. Now, if we do find ourselves in a position where we want to get this foot higher, I call this taking a taxi. So we're going to call a taxi for our foot. We're just going to grab it and just pull it a little bit higher here. I take my hand and place it right behind the heel, just so this way that foot doesn't really slide all the way back down to that original position. Calling it a taxi, hand right behind the heel. And right here. We're going to want to hold this for about 2 minutes on each side. Remember, everything you do to one side, you've got to do to the other. All right, finally, the last one here is going to be for the QL, the quadratus lumborum. Where's my tennis ball? We're going to want something a little bit smaller here, so either a tennis ball or a lacrosse ball is going to do. I'm going to use a lacrosse ball here. If we remember from previous videos, that quadratus lumborum is going to be a small square in the back that goes just to the side of the spine, just below the ribs, and just above that hip crest. Find those bone markings on your body with your hands. And as long as we stay within the bounds of those bones, we should be able to find the QL rather easily. So, we're taking that ball, we're going to place it right in that small square at the low of the back, and we're going to lay all the way down on top of it, keeping both of my knees bent. We're going to take a good inhale. On that exhale, we're going to raise that knee that we have the ball under here. We're going to take a second inhale. On that exhale, we're going to grab the knee and slowly pull it to the chest. Now this is going to put a little bit more pressure into that low back by pressing it into the ball. We can use this knee as a joystick, so everywhere the knee goes, the pressure is going to follow in that low back. If we want to put a little bit of extra pressure into it, pull it towards the chest or pull it towards the outside of the body here. This is a much smaller area, so we're not really going to be rolling around all too much. It's more so pinpoint, so we don't really want to be on this area more than about a minute. Everything we do to one side, got to do to the other. So take that out from under us, find the correct bone markings, and then place that at the QL. So this way we're not on any bone. Again, take a good breath. And 1 minute. And my favorite accommodating stretch for this is going to be knee rolls. We're going to do this by inhaling both knees up, and we're going to exhale as we drop it off to one side. Now that we're down in this position, you're going to want to go ahead and elongate this bottom leg here as far as we can there. I like to take this front side hand and place it right on that knee just to give me a little bit of an extra stretch. You can also take this opposite hand and place it just to the other side over here. This is going to help anchor down the shoulders and make sure that the top of the spine does not move. You should feel a good stretch right in that QL, maybe a little bit into the glute as well. We're going to hold this position for about a minute. Once a minute passes, go ahead and inhale that leg up. Find another breath, good inhale as we come back to the middle. And everything we do to one side, we got to do to the other, so go ahead and drop it to the other side. After we do this, I like to do a couple of rocks, just bring some mobility back into the spine. We're going to curl that neck up and then hug the knees here. We're going to be creating a nice cradle in the spine, going all the way from the tailbone all the way up to the neck. We can go back and forth, we can go side to side, whatever you prefer. Now always remember, when working up into a good mobility routine, please start slowly and gradually. You may experience some discomfort the first time that you do some of these exercises, but I can assure you that it will subside with consistency. Always remember, consistency is key. Hydrating adequately is also really going to help here. As we break up a lot of this connective tissue, drinking extra water is going to help flush out a lot of that unneeded tissue and make sure that our muscles, that our other soft tissue is going to be nice and optimal in our range of motion. But anyway, guys, I don't got too much else for you. Like I said, we've got the new Squattober shirts out. They're a limited run. Grab one while you can. I'll leave a link down in the comments below. Other than that, leave a like, leave a comment. It really helps us out. Let me know anything that we learned today or any suggestions for future content that you want to see. I'm Coach Alex. Y'all be good. Drink some water. I'll see y'all in the next one.